We're live. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This is the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum Show. A little later than normal, but you know what? We just want to help share information. And if you are connected, like if you did a double once, twice on the bell, you'll get notified when we go live. And I got lots of content I'm working on this weekend to throw out. So there's going to be content going out different times, hopefully in the next couple of weeks and months, because there's so much out there, because we are on our 643rd show. And today I want to talk about, I found this is an old document, an old F-18 flight readiness review manual. And I found, when I was getting my professional engineer's certificate, a big box. They had to know all this is study material. There's like another one, just like this one that I have, right? And I had questions the other day about, how do you do standard operating procedures and specifications in Agile and Scrum? How does that work? For me, I've been doing it this way forever because I hate administrative paperwork. I get it all done, but I hate it. So I find ways to be very agile and getting it done. So I want to share with you some of that today in a short episode, because there's a seminar going on in a little bit, and I want to go to the seminar and learn, keep absorbing, keep growing with that growth mindset. So with that, 5 a.m. Mester Scrum Show. I am Greg Mester, Scrum Master and Agile Coach. And here we talk about Agile and Scrum in a practical and tactical way, so you can bring value to your customer without working extra hard. And we're going to talk about, recreate. We're never going to recreate this giant book every sprint. Okay, so if anybody comes here and say, well, we need to deliver this much manual stuff every time we release code or a product or something every sprint, when they're insane. Okay, so we don't want to work that hard, and we want to have fun, right? We want to get you home to family and friends, like our mission says, so that you can have fun with your friends and family and just enjoy life and grow and do seminars and things like that you want to do on your own, and have fun in the office. Because if you have to write that spec every day, every sprint, you're going to lose it, right? So with that, a couple of things I saw some people like, how do you get specs into an agile way? How do you do that? So one, you got to rethink about spec. But I want to just talk about, let's just talk standard operating procedure, quality manuals, process documentation. Like, I think if I were to go in this flight manual thing, there's probably about 1 million references, okay? I want to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about performance specs, something we used to do in the 90s. It's just kind of the same thing with stories and what you're doing today, so I want to talk about that too. So standard operation procedures, standard SOPs, the dreaded SOPs, right? A lot of places like to have brand new standard operating procedures for every release. In the old waterfall days, right? So it's hard. In the waterfall days, you would put in your Gantt chart, like if you had your Gantt chart and your thing, and then you would have like a SOP documentation, be a documentation bar graph that would go across the entire map of your project, right? So in the old way, okay, we're going to deliver a new product, so we're going to build a spec and hand that off as a documentation part to the project, to the customer. Government loves those things. Some places love them. It's very much government-esque. Sometimes they're really good, because if you want to take that design, that document, and sell it or have someone else management, it's nice to have, right? It's good to have, I'll tell you. They never look at it anyhow. Never. So unless they want to rebuild a part or something. So what do? So what you do, let's say you have a quality manual, and you do, and I want to say your definition of done leads right into your standard operating procedure. So definition of done is basically your standard operating procedure, okay? Where I've seen people try to do this is like, well, we're going to rewrite the standard operating procedure and have it signed off by a bunch of people every time we go release code. I'm going to be honest with you. If you were to come to my desk and hand me a a book, even if it's not that big. Let's say you gave me something that was 50 pages long that had these operating procedures. And think about your definition of done. You do unit testing, or maybe it's unit testing, unit test, maybe a code reviews, integration testing, all that kind of testing. So that's all part of your definition done. So that becomes standard operating procedure. Okay. There's a lot of places out there to release. You got to reference the standard that's the back way. That's the wrong way of doing it. So a lot of times they would write, okay, I have a release A, and I'm going to follow standard operating procedure, SOP A, right? And then they do a release B, and then they would write a standard operating procedure B, right? But B is actually the same as A. Unless you change it, then I hope you're changing your definition. Done. Okay? So you got to think about how to save your time and energy. So instead of doing this, what I do is I reference a single standard operating procedure. So what it'll be release A, and then there's a release B, and they all both represent a standard operating procedure, or DOD, what's the team. So the only thing that changes is the release documentation. We never change the SOP for the definition of done unless we do, and then we rewrite it. So here's why I say that. I can do release documentation in a one-pager, right? That follows all the standard, everything from a quality manual to testing, procedures, documentation, signature, scope, whatever. So I can write a one-page sheet that has signature that references any standard stuff that we use every time, common business practice, common coding practice. And all I do is modify and get signatures for the release cover page. But these pages, these subvert reference models never change. Therefore, I don't get them signed off, because what I've seen some people do is they would go around, and I'm amazed. I'm not amazed. It hasn't done it, because I helped assemble the specification for the F-18 LRIP program. You want to talk about a spec, right? Big one, right? If I were to go to each engineer and hand that spec to each one every time we made a change and had them sign it, they would all take me out and shoot me. But anyway, so with the standard operating procedure, you get them all to sign it. The managers, the quality people, the tech people, the business, all those, they sign the mass document. All you do is you reference that page in your new release document. We're using standard operation release whatever, right? That stays. Only if it changes do you change your page to say, hey, we're doing release B or something of the standard operating procedure, and you made sure that was released. That way, in a Scrum and Agile way, you're only giving them one piece of paper to review. One little sheet, one little document, right? Just one little thing, one little piece of paper, not like pages upon pages of stuff for them to review and read. Because if you gave them all that, they're never going to want to do it. And that's what delays these releases with documentation. You give them a book to review because you made one little update to the spec or the documentation, and you really don't do it that way, right? It's not a master document, or you just make a mod to it and say, here's what we're doing, and you leave the master standard operating procedure alone. You don't keep adding, like I've seen it where they would, like I said, they wrote a release A or a standard operation procedure. I wish I wrote another one where they would write it where they said standard operating procedure. We use this procedure in release A, B, C, D, F, G, whatever. So that way, every time they made a release, they had to get everyone to sign the entire standard operating procedure, right? Sign off on it. And if you were to give me something like that to review every sprint that was like 50 pages long or had all these things, and because I don't like giving my signature out unless I read it all and made sure it is what I agreed. And here's the thing. So one, I guess hopefully you don't do that. The last thing is like, think of it this way. When I was building tanks, right? And can you imagine the specification on the tank, right? Or Bradley fighting vehicles, building Bradley fighting vehicles. Imagine the spec. I mean, yeah, it's this big, right? You never put that spec in Rev ever. Because if you did, you'd have to walk that entire spec through the whole organization to get signed off on. The odds of you doing that are probably about 0.01% of getting that done. It takes a lot of money, a lot of energy to do that. And if you have to make a release, you don't move that, you modify that spec. You reference that spec and you make a change document that includes changes to whatever the reference spec was. All you do is review the change spec, right? You don't review the master spec. The master spec stays there. But if you make a change, they can review the master spec and see how it does. But you never, ever update the books that are like, like this. You never update these books, these giant books, right? You never update them. You'd update the change document that references those books or says, hey, we're going to use that book to build this change. That's how you get Agile. That's how you get your documentation done. You're not changing, because if you were doing waterfall, I would never do that. If someone did that wave when I was doing waterfall, I'd go on, I can't get this through the cycle. Give me something that I can get through the cycle. I'm never going to get a change for the entire plane or tank or whatever ship software program through. I just need what we're changing, exactly what it is, and how it's a delta from the original. And you submit that for people to approve, not the entire documentation in a sprint, because that ain't going to happen. So if you think you're going to do that and someone sends that to you from an old way, well, here's how we did it in the past. We would rewrite we would put a header in the main document. We give it a rev. No, don't ever do that. So you got to change those kind of things. So that's how you get these specs and documentation. The only other thing I'll add to this, because I got to go, we're at the 12-minute mark. Back in the 90s, we used to write these very detailed specifications. I mean, it would tell you how to do it. You know what we went to? We went to performance specs. You know what the performance specs? It would tell you what they wanted, not how to do it. Doesn't that sound familiar to stories? Stories should be what the business wants to see, not how to do it. So there's old methodology where specification would tell you exactly what to do and how to do it, but that's not what you want. This is what I want. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, and you leave that up to the teams. So that's how you get these documentation through the system and change process, right? So share that with you a little bit. Big giant, how to do specs first, a performance spec. I took a spec and made it 5 pages and said, here's what I want. This is what I want to do. Left the other stuff intact. So wanted to share that with you. I hope that helps some people when they're doing their documentation, how to do it. Again, you make a summary document that references all the different standard operating procedures that you do not change. And you say, I'm using those documents. You do not take your standard operation procedure, modify it for every release you're ever going to do. Some places use a matrix, by the way. They use a master matrix and they reference in the document what all the documents are and what the revs are. So they can change that as of this date. This was the document we used, dated XYZ and rev whatever in this release. Makes it easier. So with that, please give us a thumbs up if you like. I hope we made your lives a little bit easier so you don't have to work as hard to get the value to the customer. And ring the little bell once, twice, so you get notification when we go live. With that, I wish you all the best. And we got lots of podcasts are going out. Don't forget your podcasts for the weekend. And enjoy life. Take care. Have fun. Enjoy your weekend. Bye. See ya. See ya.